Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I'm right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, it's in the state of Tennessee. And today's date is Sunday afternoon, September the 1st, 2024. The time is 12:25 p.m. First thing, thank you, my family, my support for you. Continue to encourage, support, continue. Keep myself employed in Memphis, try to stay here, continue to further my education and moral college online. Continue to pursue my social degree, studying, being administrative, contract, and marketing. Present time, take a break and go to school. In the future, I'm going to go back to moral college online and continue to work toward my, not just moral college online, I'm just going to go back to school, period. And continue to work toward earning my social degree as well as other degrees. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis, in the county of state of Tennessee. Today's date is Sunday afternoon. Excuse me. September the 1st, 2024. The time is 12:26 p.m. First, say thank you to my family, my support, for you continue to encourage, support, continue to keep myself employed in Memphis, tri-state area, continue to further my education. Moral college online, continue to pursue my social degrees. I'm being a straight country market. Prayer time, took a break. I'm going to school. In the future, I'm going to go back to school and continue to work toward earning my social degree as well as other degrees. Now, the reason why I'm starting at 12, almost 12:30. See, when I got ready to start my video, Facebook Live, on my phone, it was like Facebook not responding. So, kind of had, I had to deal with the Facebook app not responding. And so once the Facebook app started responding, then I started my video. Excuse me. Excuse me. Need a little sip of water there. But like I said, when I got ready to start my video, the Facebook app was sending me a notification saying that Facebook Live wasn't responding. So I had to give Facebook an opportunity, and wait for Facebook to respond. So, now, this is a holiday weekend here in the United States of America. This weekend is coming, and then tomorrow is the holiday, Labor Day, tomorrow. And I, got PTO, paid time off. And, on television, USA, we'll be having a marathon, Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. And so, since it's a day off marathon, I enjoy the day off. Now, let's deal with the names of God in the Old Testament. Elohim, El Elyon, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Shammah, Jehovah is the husband or bridegroom. All right, click that right down. El Roy, El, Jehovah, and the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh. Jehovah Nissi, Yahweh Shalom, Jehovah Sikanu, Abba, Jehovah Sabaoth, Jehovah Nicomak, Mighty God, Adonai, El Shaddai, Jehovah Jireh, El Olam, Alpha and Omega, Emmanuel, Jehovah Ra. So those are names of God in the Old Testament. Now let's click over here to the names of God in the New Testament. Elohim, El Shaddai, Jehovah Rapha, Mighty God, Lord, Holy One, King of Kings, Adonai, Jehovah Shammah, Jehovah Sabaoth, El, Alpha and Omega, Emmanuel, Son of God, and the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh. El Roy, Jehovah Sikanu, Jehovah Roy, or God the Shepherd, Jesus, Jehovah, the Lord who sanctifies. Names of God in the New Testament. Now let's get to this Tetragrammaton. I'm going to click over here to Wikipedia. Let me scroll down. We're over on Wikipedia, so let me scroll down to the bottom. All right, we got see also references and citations, sources. All right, and of course, external links. All right. Tetragrammaton is the four-letter Hebrew theonym, transliterated as capital Y, capital M, capital H, capital W, capital H, or capital Y, capital H, capital V, capital H. The name of God in the Hebrew Bible. The four letters written and read from right to left in Hebrew are Yod, He, Wah, He. The name may be derived from a verb that means to be, to exist, to cause, to become, or to come to pass. While there is no consensus about the structure and etymology of the name, the form Yahweh is now accepted almost universally among biblical and Semitic linguistic scholars. Though the vocalization Jehovah continues to have wide use, the books of the Torah and the rest of the Hebrew Bible, except Esther, Ecclesiastes, and with a possible instance of, in verse 8:6, the Song of Songs contain this Hebrew name. Observant Jews and those who follow Talmudic Jewish tradition do not pronounce, nor do they read aloud proposed transcription form such as Yahweh or Jehovah. Instead, they replace it with a different term, whether in addressing or referring to the God of Israel. Common substitutes in Hebrew are Adonai, literally translated my lords, pluralis, majestatis, taken as singular, or Elohim, literally gods, but treated as singular when meaning God in prayer, or Hashim, the name in everyday speech. Now you have the four letters. Now let's get to the etymology. The Hebrew Bible explains it by the formula. I don't speak Hebrew. Translated, he translated, I am that I am. The name of God revealed to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. This would frame capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H as a derivation from the Hebrew triconsonantal root HYH, to be, become, come to pass, with a third person masculine Y prefix, equivalent to English he, in place of the first person, thereby affording translations as he who causes to exist, he who is, etc. Although this would elicit the form capital Y, capital H, capital Y, capital H, not capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H. To rectify this, some scholars propose that the Tetragrammaton represents a substitution of the medial Y for W, and occasionally attested practice in biblical Hebrew as both letters function as matrix lectionis. Others propose that the Tetragrammaton derived instead from the triconsonantal root HWH to be, constitute with the final form eliciting similar translation as those derived from HYH. As such, the consensus among modern scholars considers that capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H represents a verbal form, while the Y represents the third masculine verbal prefix of the verb HYH, to be, as indicated in the Hebrew Bible. Now, what they talking about, go down to this vocalization. Like all letters in the Hebrew script, the letters in capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H originally indicated consonants. In unpointed biblical Hebrew, most vowels are not written, but some are indicated ambiguously, as certain letters came to have a secondary function, indicating vowels, similar to the Latin use of I and V to indicate either the consonants J, W, or the vowels I, U. Hebrew letters used to indicate vowels are known as or matrix lectionis, mothers of reading. Therefore, it can be difficult to deduce how a word is pronounced from its spelling, and each of the four letters in the Tetragrammaton can individually serve as a mater lectionis. Several centuries later, between the 5th through 10th century, Common Era, the original consonantal text of the Hebrew Bible, was provided with vowel marks by the Masoretes to assist reading. In places where the word to be read, the kiri, differ from that indicated by the consonants of the written text, the ketiv. They wrote the kiri in the margin as a note showing what was to be read. In such a case, the vowel marks of the kiri were written on the ketiv. For a few frequent words, the marginal note was omitted. These are called kiri perpetuum. One of the frequent cases was the Tetragrammaton, which according to later rabbinic Jewish practice should not be pronounced but read as Adonai, literally my lords, pluralis majestatis, taken as singular, or if the previous or next word already was Adonai, as Elohim, God, writing the vowel diacritics of these two words on the consonants Y, H, V, H produces, and respectively ghost words that would spell Jehovah and Yehovah, respectively. The oldest complete or nearly complete manuscripts of the Masoretic text with Tiberian vocalizations such as the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex, both of the 10th or 11th century, mostly write Yahweh with no pointing on the first H. It should be because the O diacritic point plays no useful role in distinguishing between Adonai and Elohim, and so it's redundant. Or it could point to the kiri being, which is Aramaic for the name. A lot of important information, you know. Okay, now we're on Yahweh. The scholarly consensus is that the original pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton was Yahweh. Arino agrees that when in the late first millennium, Jewish scholars inserted indications of vowels into the Hebrew vowel. They signaled that what was pronounced was Adonai, Lord. Non-Jews later combined the vowels of Adonai with the consonants of the Tetragrammaton and invented the name Jehovah. Paul June and Takamitsu Morake state the Cree is the Lord, whilst the Ketiv is probably, according to ancient witnesses, and they add note 1 in our translation, we have used Yahweh, a form widely accepted by scholars instead of the traditional Jehovah. In 1869, Smith's Bible Dictionary, a collaborative work of noted scholars of the time, declared, whatever therefore be the true pronunciation of the word, there can be little doubt that it is not Jehovah. Mark P. Arnold remarks that certain conclusions drawn from the pronunciation of as Yahweh would be valid even if the scholarly consensus were not correct. Thomas Roman holds that the original pronunciation of Yahweh was Yahoo or Yehu. Max Riesel, in the mysterious name of Yahweh, said that the vocalization of the Tetragrammaton must originally have been Yahuwah or Yahuwah or Yahuwah. But the element Yahweh is found in Aramaic personal names. Yahweh, Dagan, commonly denoted as the semantic equivalent of the Akkadian. The latter refers to one existing which, in the context of deities, can also refer to one's eternal existence, which align with Bible verses such as Exodus 3:15, and views that can mean I am the existing one. It also explains the ease of Israelites applying the Olam or everlasting epithet from El to Yahweh. But J. Philip Hyatt believes it is more likely that Yahweh refers to a God creating and sustaining the life of a newborn child rather than the universe. This conception of God was more popular among ancient Near Easterners, but eventually the Israelites removed the association of Yahweh to any human ancestor and combined it with other elements. Yahweh. Hillel ben Sasson states there is insufficient evidence for Amorites using Yahweh to refer to a God, but he argues that it mirrors other theophoric names and that Yahweh, or more accurately, Yahweh, derived from the root, which means he will be. Now, the adoption at the time of the Protestant Reformation, or Jehovah in place of the traditional Lord in some new translation, what sense that make? I don't need to hear nothing about no Protestant Reformation. The Catholic Church, man. In some new translation, vernacular or Latin of the biblical Tetragrammaton, stirred up dispute about its correctness. In 1711, Adrian Reeland published a book containing the text of 17th century writers, 5 attacking and 5 defending it. As critical of the use of Jehovah, it incorporated writings by Johannes van de Driesch, 1550 to 1616, known as Drusius, Sixtinus Amama, 1593 to 1629, Louis Capel, 1585 to 1658, Johannes Busdorf, 1564 to 1629, Jacob Alting, 1618 to 1679, defended Jehovah, were writings by Nicholas Fuller, 1557, 1626, and Thomas Gottker, 1574 to 1654, and 3 essays by Johann Lustin, 1624 to 1699. The opponents of Jehovah said that the Tetragrammaton should be pronounced as Adonai, and in general do not speculate on what may have been the original pronunciation, although mention is made of the fact that some held that Javi was that pronunciation. Almost 2 centuries after the 17th century works reprinted by Reland, 19th century Wilhelm Gesenius reported in his Thesaurus Philologicus on the main reason of those who argue either for or Yahweh is the original pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton as opposed to Yehovah. He explicitly cited the 17th century writers mentioned by Reland as supporters of, as well as implicitly cited Johann David Michaelis, 1717 to 1791, and Johann Friedrich von Meyer, 1772 to 1849. The latter of whom Johann Heinrich Kurtz described as the last of those who have maintained with great pertinacity that was the correct and original point. Edward Robertson's translation of a work by Gesenius gives Gesenius' personal view as my own view coincide with that of those who regard this name as anciently pronounced Yahweh, like the Samaritans. And so, now, I ain't gonna go no further than that, but there's information about the Tetragrammaton on Wikipedia. The quick reference. So, let me click over here to BibleStudyTools.com. Got Bible versions and translations. Best known translation like the Holman Christian Standard Bible, English Standard Bible, King James Version, the New American Standard Bible, New International Version, the New King James Version, New Living Translation, New Revised Standard Bible. You have other translations, modern like the Bible in Basic English, Common English Bible, the Complete Jewish Bible, Good News Translation, Hebrew Names Version, Jubilee Bible 2000, the New International Reader's Version, Orthodox Jewish Bible, Third Millennium Bible, World English Bible, Young's Literal Translation. You have older translation of the Holy Bible, American Standard Version, the Darby Translation, the Dewey Reams Catholic Bible, Revised Standard Version, Tyndale Bible, Latin Vulgate Bible, Webster Bible, Wycliffe Bible, New Testament Only Bible, Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, Italian, Dutch, and Chinese. You know what I'm saying? So those are Bible versions. So like I said, we on BibleStudyTools.com and using the New International Version of the Bible. We have the Bible verse of the day coming from the Old Testament, the book of Nehemiah, first chapter, the 11th verse, and it reads, Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. I was cupbearer to the king. And again, reading from that's the Bible verse of the day, coming from the Old Testament book of Nehemiah, first chapter, 11th verse. And you have today's Bible reading coming from the book of John, the 9th chapter, verses 24 through 41. That's New Testament. Now, Old Testament, 2nd Chronicles, the 7th chapter. And also in the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, the 4th chapter. And so again, today's Bible reading coming from the book of John, chapter 9, verses 24 through 41. That's the New Testament. Then you go to the Old Testament. You have 2nd Chronicles, the 7th chapter. Also in the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, the 4th chapter. And so, let's click over here to BibleGateway.com. Available versions of the Holy Bible, language and diversion, starting from A to Z. Amharic, the New Amharic Standard Version of the Bible. Arabic Bible, and it's an Arabic Bible, easy to read version of the Kitab El Hayat Bible. a Wadi Bible, Pavitar Bible, that's New Indian Bible. You have all the Bulgarian Bible versions, Kubuno Bible, the Cherokee Bible. It's a Cherokee New Testament Bible. Surani, Kurdi, Surani Standard Bible, Czechoslovakian Bible, Welsh Bible, Danish Bible, German Bibles, all the English Bibles. There's a lot of them. Spanish Bible, there's a lot of those. The Persian Bible, the Farsi New Testament Bible, Finnish Bible, French Bibles, Greek Bibles, Gujarati Bible. Then you have Hebrew Bibles, Hindi Bibles, Croatian Bibles, Hungarian Bibles, Hawaii Pigeon Bible, Icelandic Bibles, Italian Bibles, Japanese Bibles, Korean Bibles, Latin Bibles, Luganda Bibles, Maori Bibles, Mam Central Bibles, Mam Toto Santos, Low German Bible, Nepali Bibles, Dutch Netherlands Bibles, Norwegian Bibles, West Central Oromo Bible, Punjabi Bible, Polish Bible, Papia Bible, Portuguese Bibles, the Kishi, Central Occidental Bibles, Romanian Bibles, Russian Bibles, Slavic Bibles, Somali Bible, Albanian Bible, Serbian Bibles, Swedish Bibles, Swahili Bibles, Tamil Bibles, Thai Bibles, Tagalog Bibles, Twi Bibles, Ukrainian Bibles, Urdu Bibles, Uzbeko Bibles, Vietnamese Bibles, Yoruba Bibles, Chinese Bibles. So all over the world, Old and New Testament of the Holy Bible being translated in various languages all around the world from A to Z. Anti-gang, anti-Gnostic, and anti-hazing. Also, adversus heresies, translated mean against heresies. Saint Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyons, together with Saint Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, wrote a 5-volume book refuting Gnosticism, proving that Gnosticism was a heresy. Also, Saint Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, in the year 367 AD, in his 39th festal letter, Easter letter, banned all non-Christian writing. Saint Athanasius, Bishop of Alexandria, together with all the other bishops in the Catholic Church, they went around and collected all that Gnostic theologian writing and destroyed it. Some Gnostic theologian writing didn't get destroyed, such as it had been buried or some, what they call it, the Bruce Codex, the Askew Codex, and the Berlin Codex, and also the Nag Hammadi Library Codexes, in which the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered in 1946, and little farm boy was outside playing and he gave what he found to his father, who was a farmer, And scholars around the world, they started inquiring about it. For example, Mr. Dorisi, a Frenchman, he asked about it and inquired about it, but he didn't get it. He didn't have it in his possession. And then later on, other scholars were trying to inquire about the Nagamon Library. And at that time, the Egyptian government was having some turmoil, internal as well as external problems. But eventually, the Egyptian government's Department of Antiquities eventually got possession of the Nagamon Library, so they put it in the library, in their museum, in the museum. And so scholars from around the world, they were still inquiring about the Nagamon Library. One man even died, Mr. John, even died trying to get possession of the Nagamon Library. And then in mid to late 60s, UNESCO, they commissioned Mr. James E. Robinson to get a lot of scholars together so they can translate the Nagamon Library. And their translation came out in the 70s, and then the mid 70s and 80s, and other translations. And eventually the college and university around the world was able to get the facsimile in the 80s. And so, but people really didn't have possession of the Nagamon Library. It took some time. And also, St. Epiphanius of Salome, the Bishop of Cyprus, wrote a 3-volume book titled Panorean Greek, Panorean Latin, translated meaning bread basket. The scholars at the college and universities around the world also said that St. Epiphanius of Salome, Bishop of Cyprus, 3-volume book is also adversary against heresies. The Almighty, conservative, Vice Lord, Four Corner Hustle. The Almighty, Black, Prince Stone. The Almighty, Mickey, Cobra Stone, Cracker. The Almighty, Black, Disciple, Poppy. The Almighty Bluefield, Black Disciple, the Black Disciple. Lord, Stone, Disciple. Gangster Disciple Killer, GDK. Glazed Donut Killer, GDK. 7-11, G Killer. Goofy. Now, Hippolytus of Rome was a bishop of Rome and one of the most important second, third century Christian theologians whose provenance, identity, and corpus remain elusive to scholars and historians. Suggested communities include Rome, Palestine, Egypt, Anatolia, and other regions of the Middle East. The best historians of literature in the ancient church, including Eusebius of Caesarea and Jerome, openly confess they cannot name where Hippolytus, the biblical commentator and theologian, served in leadership. They had read his works but did not possess evidence of his community. Photius I of Constantinople describes him in his Bibliotheca as a disciple of Irenaeus, who was said to be a disciple of Polycarp. And from the context of this passage, it is supposed that he suggested that Hippolytus so styled himself. This assertion is doubtful. One older theory asserts he came into conflict with the popes of his time and seems to have headed a schismatic group as a rival to the Bishop of Rome, thus becoming an antipope. In this view, he opposed the Roman popes, who softened the penitential system to accommodate the large number of new pagan converts. However, he was reconciled to the church before he died as a martyr. Starting in the 4th century, various legends arose about him, identifying him as a priest of the Novocationist schism or as a soldier converted by St. Lawrence. He has also been confused with another martyr of the same time. Pope Pius IV identifies him as Saint Hippolytus, Bishop of Pontius, who was martyred in the reign of Severus Alexander through his inscription on a statue found at the Church of St. Lawrence in Rome and kept at the Vatican as photographed and published in Bunsen. Now, some of his writings. Controversy surrounds the corpus of the writer Hippolytus. In the Victorian era, scholars claim his principal work to be the refutation of all heresies. Of his 10 books, Book 1 was the most important. It was long known and was printed with the title Philosophomenia. Among the works of Origen, books 2 and 3 are lost, and books 4 through 10 were found without the name of the author in a monastery of Mount Athos in 1842. Emmanuel Miller published them in 1851 under the title Philosophomenia, attributing them to Origen of Alexandria. Recent scholarship prefers to treat the text as the work of an unknown author, perhaps of Roman origin. Alright. So, like I said, there's Hippolytus of Rome. Supposedly, he wrote refutation of all heresies. Apparently, there's some controversy behind all that. But and also Rabbi Akiva, from the Jewish standpoint, Rabbi Akiva, during the mid to late 1st century, before he was martyred at the Bar Kokhba revolt, had made it clear he did not want Judaism to be influenced by Grecian philosophy, and he didn't want that Gnostic nonsense to be an influence on Judaism, nor that intellectual influence on Judaism. Oh, okay. Now, what I was looking at is like I've been saying all the time. See, when you talk about Lord Stone disciples, in the year, let me see, we talking about 1958, the late 50s, coming into the 60s. So you had this little punk, this little peon named Larry Hoover. We talking about almost in the middle of 1960s. You got all this vice lord with Evan Pepelo Perry and all the vice lords wiped out all those social clubs and all this. Then you got all the black disciples. Chief Malik, Jeff Fort, the black P Stones, the black Prince Stones, and then you have all this black disciples. I mean, they spread all over the place, all over Cabrini Green and all over the place, all over Inglewood and things. His name, the black disciples, with King David Barsdale. And then you come into the 60s. And this took place in Inglewood, in the city of Chicago, around 68th and Green Street. And about 30 of them young black guys, youths got together at this intersection and they hung out in Larry Hoover's house and looking out the window as gangsters and pimps hung out in the parking lot of the Guys and Gals nightclub that used to exist at that intersection. These boys wanted to be just like them pimps and gangsters. And they were living on the border of Ranger and Disciple territory. Larry Hoover was inspired to be a leader of gangsters and began dressing himself very well to fit the role. Eventually, these boys created their own club called the Supreme Gangsters, which was Larry Hoover's idea for the club name. And Larry Hoover himself was not the first official leader, but more of a behind-the-scenes type leader. Hoover teamed up with street hustler Andrew D.D. Howard and King Ike Taylor and made King Ike his right-hand man. The Supreme Gangsters wore the color black, and their symbol worked hard with wings and a round crown with the sword going through it. The Supreme Gangsters saluted each other with a clenched fist as their hand sign. So this little peon, you know what I'm saying, this goofy, nothing but a peon, sitting up in the federal penitentiary today. Him and the rest of them had the nerve to try to make it sound like they were smart. They looking out the window at some so-called gangsters and pimps. See, this is what I've been saying about this nagging my library and going around talking about this Gnosticism. The Nehemiah Library and all that other Gnostic writing like the Askew Codex, the Bruce Codex, and the Berlin Codex. And then you had the Nehemiah Library discovered in 1946. They didn't even get possession of the Nehemiah Library really until the 1960s. It had to be translated. That's what UNESCO was doing, trying to actually get possession of it and get that stuff translated. And then the colleges and universities around the world, they didn't really get their copy of the translation, the facsimile, until the mid to late 80s. But yeah, man, we're gonna use the Nehemiah Library. Yeah, man, yes, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, yeah, okay. You thought that was smart. But this little peon named Larry Hoover. Him and the rest of them peons going around calling themselves the gangster disciples now. Think somebody got respect for them talking about some growth and development, man? A con artist. No more some con artists trying to scam other people. Now, like I said, you don't try to make other people like they stupid. You the one who was stupid. Dualism and cosmology. No, you're not smart, man. You're not smart. You're not smart. You're a damn fool. You're really stupid. All right, let's get to Jewish principles of faith. We got to lay this foundation. On monotheism. So we got peons like Larry Hoover and the rest of them clowns calling themselves the gangster disciples. And then out there in Los Angeles, California, you got the so-called Crip gang, and then you got the other ones calling themselves the Bloods and the Pyrus. And then they make YouTube videos trying to make you think it's something different. It's something different about the Pyrus. Then it's something different about the Bloods, and then it's something different about the Daymoods. Hell, ain't nothing different. A bunch of damn stupid ass fools. You know where they came from, right? They came from right down here. They came from Mississippi. They were the Crips and the Bloods. They where they came from. From Mississippi. From Arkansas. From Louisiana. From Alabama. From Texas. They where they came from. They not originally from California. They where them punks come from. They know some homosexuals and some lesbians going around talking about Gnosticism, the material world evil. All right, let's get this Jewish principle of faith. Judaism does not centralize authority in any single individual or group. The formulation of principle of faith that are universally recognized by all branches of Judaism remains undefined. There is no central authority in Judaism in existence today, although the Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish religious court, would fulfill its role if it were reestablished. Instead, Judaism's principle of faith remains debated by the rabbis based on their understanding of the sacred writing, laws, and traditions, which collectively shape its theological and ethical framework. The most accepted version and extent is the opinion of Maimonides. Judaism affirms the existence and uniqueness of God and stresses the performance of deeds or commandments alongside adherence to a strict belief system. In contrast to religions such as Christianity, which demand a more explicit identification of God. Faith in Judaism requires one to honor God through adherence to God's instructions, Torah, and the practice of all of the mitzvah. Orthodox Judaism stresses a number of core principles in this educational program. Most important, a belief that there is one single, omniscient, transcendent, non-compound God who created the universe and continues to be concerned with its governance. Traditional Judaism maintained that God established a covenant with the Jewish people at Mount Sinai and revealed his laws and 613 commandments to them in the form of the written and oral Torah. In Rabbinic Judaism, the Torah consists of both the written Torah, Pentateuch, and the tradition of oral law, which of latter codified in sacred writing. Then you have to see the Mishnah and Talmud. Now, we're over here on Wikipedia right now. So let me scroll down right quick. Down to the bottom, we have references. And we have further reading. All right. Let me get back up here. All right, scroll back up. Traditionally, the practice of Judaism has been devoted to the study of Torah and observance of its laws and commandments In normative Judaism, the Torah and hence Jewish law itself is unchanged, but interpretation of the law is more open. It is considered a mitzvah, commandment, to study and understand the law. The proper counterpart for the general English term faith as occurring in the spiritual principle of faith will be the concept of emunah. In Judaism, the word amen comes from this word and means I trust, believe, while it is generally translated as faith or trust in God. The concept of emunah can more accurately be described as an innate conviction, a perception of truth that transcends reason. Emunah can be enhanced through wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and learning of sacred Jewish writings. But emunah is not simply based on reason, nor can it be understood as the opposite of or standing in contrast to reason. There are a number of basic principles that were formulated by medieval rabbinic authorities. These are put forth as fundamental underpinnings inherent in the acceptance and practice of Judaism. The conception of God. Monotheism. Judaism is based on a strict monotheism and the belief in one single, indivisible, non-compound God, the Shema Yisrael. One of the most important Jewish prayers encapsulates the monotheistic nature of Judaism. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. Judaism emphatically rejects any concept of plurality with respect to God, explicitly rejecting polytheism, dualism, and Trinitarianism, which are incompatible with monotheism as Judaism understands it. The unity of God is stated many times in Jewish tradition. It is the second of Maimonides' 13 principles of faith. Maimonides wrote that this God is one, nor two or more than two, but one, whose unity is different from all other unities that there are. He is not one as a genus, which contains many species, is one, nor is he one as a body containing parts and dimensions, is one. But his is a unity that which there is no other anywhere. Yad, Yesod, Ho, Torah. 1:7. In Jewish tradition, dualistic and Trinitarian conceptions of God are generally referred to as shetuf, or partnership, meaning an incorrect but not an idolatrous view. God is the creator of the universe. Most Jews believe that God is creator of the universe. Different sets of Jews view this in different ways. For example, some ultra-Orthodox Jew groups reject the concept of evolution and believe the earth to be only a few thousand years old. Other groups of Orthodox and non-Orthodox Jews do not believe in a literal interpretation of the Genesis creation narrative. And according to that view, Judaism is not in contradiction to the scientific model that states that the age of the universe is around 13.77 billion years old. Norbert M. Samuelson writes, the question of dating the universe has never been a problem of Jewish philosophy, ultimately because that philosophy has never taken the literal meaning of the Bible to be its revealed true meaning. While the general Jewish attitude has been that God created the world ex nihilo, Rabbi Mark D. Angel writes that historically there has been a general reluctance in Jewish tradition to speculate on the metaphysical aspects of creation. The important statement for Judaism that God did in fact create the world and evolutionary process did not simply happen by itself, but was set into motion by God. While the Bible speaks of God creating the world in 6 days, it may be speaking figuratively. The word yom today in the creation story can hardly be proved to be referring to a day of 24 hours. After all, the sun itself was not created until the fourth day. So it is impossible to argue that the first 3 days were days as we know them. A more appropriate way to understand the creation story is that God created the universe in 6 stages, and each of these stages may have taken millions of years, or 24 hours, or instants. In short, Judaism insists that God created the world, that he created it in stages, and that he continues to maintain the universe which he created. The specific details of the creation process are not central to Jewish thought. Moses Maimonides, 12th century, wrote that by virtue of the existence of the Creator, everything exists, and that time itself is part of creation. And therefore, when God is described as existing before the creation of the universe, the notion of time should not be understood in its normal sense. The 15th century Jewish philosopher Joseph Albo argued similarly in his Ikarim that there are two types of time: measured time, which depends on motion, and time in the abstract, the second of which has no origin and is the infinite space of time before the universe was created. Albert argued that although it is difficult to conceive of God existing in such a duration, it is likewise difficult to imagine God outside space. Other Jewish writers have come to different conclusions, such as 13th century scholar Beya ben Asher, 16th century scholar Moses Nino, and the 18th century Hasidic teacher Naaman of Braslav, who expressed a view similar to that expressed by Christian Neoplatonic writer Boethius, that God lives in the eternal present and transcends or is above all time. The nature of God. The Jews view that God is eternal, with neither beginning nor end, a principle stated in a number of biblical passages. The rabbis taught a quite literal, down-to-earth view of the eternalness of God, that God is eternal, but it is not given to man to explore the full meaning of this idea. And so, one cannot therefore expect to find in the rabbinic literature anything like a detailed examination of what is meant by divine eternity. A famous Mishnah statement on attempts to pierce the veil is this: whoever reflects on four things, it were better for him that he had not come into the world. What is above, what is beneath, what is before, and what is after. The traditional Jewish view that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. Various Jewish thinkers, however, have proposed a finite God, sometimes in response to the problem of evil. In Ideas About Free Will, Louis Jacobs writes that modern Jewish thinkers such as Levi Olin, echoing some classical Jewish writers such as the 14th century Talmudists, Gersonides, have thought of God as limited by his own nature, so that while he is infinite in some respects, he is finite in others, referencing the idea present in classical sources that there is a primal, formless, material coexistence with God from all eternity upon which God has to work, and that God only knows the future in a general sense, but not how individual men will exercise their choice. On the topic of omniscience and free will, Jacobs writes that in the medieval period, three views were put forth. Maimonides wrote that God had foreknowledge and man is free. Gersonides, who wrote that man is free, and consequently God does not have complete knowledge, and Hasdai Crackers, who write in Or Adonai that God has complete knowledge, foreknowledge, and consequently man is not really free. Several Jewish writers have dealt with the issue of theodicy, whether and how God is all powerful. And all good, given the existence of evil in the world, particularly the Holocaust. John D. Levison argues that omnipotence doctrine fails to give due regard to the formidability and resilience of the forces counteracting creation, such as the primordial state of chaos existing before creation, and leads to a neglect of the role of humanity in forming and stating the world order. Hans Jonas proposed a tentative myth that God chose in the beginning to give God's self over to the chance and risk and endless variety of becoming, entering into the adventure of space and time. Jonas expressed the view that God does not create the world by fiat, although God does create the world, but leads it by beckoning it into novel possibility of becoming. Jonas, who was influenced by the Holocaust experience, believed that God is omnipresent, but not in all respects non-temporal, impassible, immutable, and unqualified omnipotent. Most of classical Judaism views God as a personal God. Rabbi Samuel S. Cohen wrote that God has conceived by Judaism is not only the first cause, the creative power, and the world reason, but also the living and loving Father of men. He is not only cosmic, but also personal. Jewish monotheism thinks of God in terms of definite character or personality, while pantheism is content with a view of God as impersonal. This is shown in the Jewish liturgy such as in the Adon Olam hymn, which includes a confident affirmation that He is my God, my living God, who hears and answers. Edward Kiesler writes that Hebrew Bible portrays an encounter with a God who cares passionately and who addresses humanity in the quiet moments of its existence. British Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sacks suggests that God is not distant in time or detached, but passionately engaged and present. The predicate personal as applied to God does not mean that God is corporeal or anthropomorphic, views which Judaism has always rejected. Rather, personality refers not to physicality, but to inner essence, psychical, rational, and moral. Although most Jews believe that God can be experienced, it is understood that God cannot be understood because God is utterly unlike humankind, as shown in God's response to Moses when Moses asked to God's name, I am that I am. All anthropomorphic statements about God are understood as linguistic metaphors. Otherwise, it would be impossible to talk about God at all. Although the dominant strain in Judaism is that God is personal, there is an alternate stream of tradition exemplified by Maimonides, who, along with several other Jewish philosophers, rejected the idea of a personal God. This reflected his belief in negative theology that God can only be described by what God is not. Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan, who developed Reconstructionist Judaism and taught at the conservative Jewish Theological Seminary of America, also rejected the idea of a personal God. Kaplan instead thought of God as a force like gravity, but built into the very structure of the universe, believing that since the universe is constructed to enable us to gain personal happiness and communal solidarity when we act morally, it follows that there is a moral force in the universe. This force is what the constructionists mean by God. Although some Reconstructionists do believe in a personal God, according to Joseph Telushkin and Morris and Kurtzer, Kaplan's rationalist rejection of the traditional Jewish understanding of God exerted a powerful influence on many conservative and reform rabbis, influencing many to stop believing in a personal God. According to the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Laws 2008 U.S. Religious Landscape Survey, Americans who identify as Jewish by religion are twice as likely to favor ideas of God as an impersonal force over the idea that God is a person with whom people can have a relationship. Sole devotion to the Creator. Within Judaism, the essence of worship is deeply rooted in the belief of monotheism, emphasizing the exclusive devotion to the Creator. This principle dictates that worship and reverence should be directed solely towards God, as articulated by Maimonides' fifth principle of faith. According to this belief, no entity aside from the Creator is deemed worthy of worship. Revelation, Scripture. The Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, is the Jewish scriptural canon and central source of Jewish law. The word is an acronym formed from the initial Hebrew letters of the three traditional subdivisions of the Tanakh: the Torah, teaching, also known as the 5 books of Moses or Pentateuch, the Nevi'im, prophets, and the Ketuvim, writings. The Tanakh contains 24 books in all. Its authoritative version is the Masoretic text. Traditionally, the text of the Tanakh was said to have been finalized at the Council of Jamnia in 70 CE, although this is uncertain. In Judaism, the term Torah referred not only to the 5 books of Moses, but also to all of the Jewish scriptures, the whole of Tanakh, and the ethical and moral instruction of the rabbis, the oral Torah. In addition to the Tanakh, there are 2 further textual traditions in Judaism: Mishnah, tractates expounding on Jewish law, and the Talmud, commentary of Mishnah and Torah. These are both codifications and redactions of the Jewish oral tradition and major works in rabbinic Judaism. The Talmud consists of the Babylonian Talmud, produced in Babylon around 600 CE, and the Jerusalem Talmud, produced in the land of Israel circa 400 CE. The Babylonian Talmud is the more extensive of the two and is considered the more important. The Talmud is a representation of the Torah through sustained analysis and argument with unfolding dialogue and contention between rabbinic sages. The Talmud consists of the Mishnah, a legal code, and the Gemara, Aramaic for learning, and analysis and commentary to that code. Rabbi Adin Stansos writes that if the Bible is the cornerstone of Judaism, then the Talmud is the central pillar. No other work has had a comparable influence on the theory and practice of Jewish life, shaping influence on the theory and practice of Jewish life, and states, the Talmud is the repository of thousands of years of Jewish wisdom and the oral law, which is as ancient and significant as the written law. The Torah finds expression therein. It is a conglomerate of law, legend, and philosophy, a blend of unique logic and shrewd pragmatism, of history and science, anecdotes and humor. Although its main objective is to interpret and comment on a book of law, it is simultaneously a work of art that goes beyond legislation in its practical application. And although the Talmud is to this day the primary source of Jewish law, it cannot be cited as an authority for purposes of ruling. Though based on the principle of a tradition and the transmission of authority from generation to generation, it is unparalleled in its eagerness to question and re-examine convention and accepted views and to root out underlying causes. The Talmudic method of discussion and demonstration tries to approximate mathematical precision, but without having recourse to mathematical or logical symbol. The Talmud is the embodiment of the great concept of mitzvah Talmud Torah, the positive religious duty of studying Torah, of acquiring learning and wisdom, study which is its own end and reward. Moses and the Torah. Orthodox and conservative Jews hold that the prophecy of Moses is held to be true. He is held to be the chief of all prophets, even of those who came before and after him. This belief was expressed by Maimonides, who wrote that Moses was superior to all prophets, whether they preceded him or arose afterwards. Moses attained the highest possible human level. He perceived God to a degree surpassing every human that ever existed. God spoke to all other prophets through an intermediary. Moses alone did not need this. This is what the Torah means when God said, mouth to mouth, I will speak to him. The great Jewish philosopher Philo understands this type of prophecy to be an extraordinarily high level of philosophical understanding, which had been reached by Moses and which enabled him to write the Torah through his own rational deduction of natural law. Maimonides described a similar concept of prophecy. Since a voice that did not originate from a body cannot exist, the understanding of Moses was based on his lofty philosophical understanding. However, this does not imply that the text of the Torah should be understood literally as according to charisma. Rabbinic tradition maintained that God conveyed not only the words of the Torah but the meaning of the Torah. God gives rules as to how the law was to be understood and implemented, and these were passed down as oral tradition. This oral law was passed down from generation to generation and ultimately written down almost 2,000 years later in the Mishnah and the two Talmuds. For Reformed Jews, the prophecy of Moses was not the highest degree of prophecy. Rather, it was the first in a long chain of progressive revelation in which mankind gradually began to understand the will of God better and better. As such, they maintain that the laws of Moses are no longer binding, and it is today's generation that must assess what God wants of them. This principle is also rejected by most Reconstructionist Jews, but for a different reason. Most posit that God is not a being with a will. Thus, they maintain that no will can be revealed. the origin of the Torah. The Torah is composed of 5 books called in English Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They chronicle the history of the Hebrews and also contain the commandments that Jews are to follow. Rabbinic Judaism holds that the Torah extant today is the same one that was given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. Maimonides explained, we do not know exactly how the Torah was transmitted to Moses, but when it was transmitted, Moses merely wrote it down like a secretary taking dictation. Thus, every verse in the Torah is equally holy, as they all originate from God and are all part of God's Torah, which is perfect, holy, and true. Haredi Jews generally believe that the Torah today is not different from what was received from God to Moses, with only the most minor of scribal errors. Many other Orthodox Jews suggest that over the millennia, some scribal errors have crept into the Torah text. They note that the Masoretes, 7th to 10th centuries, compared all known Torah variations in order to create a definitive text. However, even according to this position, that the scrolls that the Jews possess today are not letter perfect. The Torah scrolls are certainly the word perfect textus receptus that was divinely revealed to Moses. Indeed, the general consensus of Orthodox rabbinic authority posits this belief in the word perfect nature of the Torah scroll as a defining feature of Orthodox Judaism. Although even in modern Orthodox circles, there are some rabbis, Professor Mark Shapiro, that point out the numerous rabbinic sources from the Talmudic, post-Talmudic, and medieval ages that claim that there were some changes to the text, which include whole verses that were made deliberately during the Mishnah era and even during the time of the First Temple. Professor Shapiro lists the many medieval rabbis discussed changes and additions that occurred during the time of Ezra, described in his work, The Limits of Orthodox Theology, Maimonides' 13 Principles, Real Praise, Prophecy. Jews believe that the Almighty Creator at times chooses to prophesy. Many of such occurrences are described in the Nevi'im, the books of the prophets. However, since the destruction of the first temple, prophecy has ceased. Oral Torah. Orthodox Jews view the written and oral Torah as the same as Moses taught for all practical purposes. Conservative Jews tend to believe that much of the oral law is divinely inspired, while Reform and Reconstructionist Jews tend to view all of the oral law as an entirely human creation. Traditionally, the Reform movement held that Jews were obliged to obey the ethical but not the ritual commandments of Scripture. Although today many Reformed Jews have adopted many traditional ritual practices, Karaite Jews traditionally consider the written Torah to be authoritative, viewing the oral law as only one possible interpretation of the written Torah. Most modern Orthodox Jews will agree that while certain laws within the oral law were given to Moses, most of the Talmudic laws were derived organically by the rabbis of the Mishnah and Talmudic eras. God's relationship with men. Judaism focuses more on how God defines men than one trying to define God. There is therefore a focus on what people are expected to be or do far more than on spelling out theological beliefs. People are born with both a tendency to do good and to do evil. Jewish tradition mostly emphasizes free will, and most Jewish thinkers reject determinism on the basis that free will and the exercise of free choice have been considered a precondition of moral life. Moral indeterminacy seems to be assumed both by the Bible, which bids man to choose between good and evil, and by the rabbis who hold the decision for following the good inclination rather than the evil rests with every individual. Maimonides asserted the compatibility of free will with foreknowledge of God. Only a handful of Jewish thinkers have expressed deterministic views. This group includes the medieval Jewish philosopher Hazdai Crescus in the 19th century, Hasidic Rabbi Mordecai Yosef Leiner of Izbika. All is necessary for God because he is perfect. But for mankind, all is possible by virtue of choice. The two types of view are true with knowing about the prophet who is in the Vika with God to be wise and to perform miracles for him. Judaism affirms that people are born with both a Yisr Hatov, an inclination or impulse to do good, and with a Yisr Hara, an inclination or impulse to do evil. These phrases reflect the concept that within each person there are opposing natures continually in conflict and are referenced many times in the rabbinic tradition. The rabbis even recognize a positive value to the Yisr Hara. Without the Yisr Hara, there would be no civilization or other fruits of human labor. Midrash states, without the evil inclination, no one will father a child, build a house, or make a career. The implication is that Yisr Hatov and Yisr Hara are best understood not only as moral categories of good and evil, but as the inherent conflict within man between selfless and selfish orientation. Judaism recognizes two classes of sin: offenses against other people and offenses against God. Offenses against God may be understood as violation of a contract, the covenant between God and the children of Israel. Once a person has sinned, there are various means by which they may obtain atonement. Then you have to see atonement in Judaism. Judaism rejects the belief in original sin. Both ancient and modern Judaism teaches that every person is responsible for his own actions. The existence of some innate sinfulness on each human being was discussed in both biblical Genesis 8:21, Psalm 51:5, and post-biblical sources. However, in the biblical verse, this is brought as an argument for divine mercy, as humans cannot be blamed for the nature they were created with. Some apocryphal and pseudepigraphic sources express pessimism about human nature. A grain of evil seed was sown in Adam's heart from the beginning. In the Talmud, Avodah Zarah has an unusual passage which Elbakisa described as the serpent seduced Eve in paradise and impregnated her with spiritual, physical dirt, which was inherited through the generation. But the revelation at Sinai and the reception of the Torah cleansed Israel. Kiesler states that although it is clear that belief in some form of original sin did exist in Judaism, it did not become mainstream teaching, nor dogmatically fixed, but remained at the margins of Judaism. Reward and punishment. The mainstream Jewish view is that God will reward those who observe his commandments and punish those who intentionally transgress them. Examples of rewards and punishment are described throughout the Bible and throughout classical rabbinic literature. The common understanding of this principle is accepted by most Orthodox and conservative and many Reformed Jews. It is generally rejected by the Reconstructionists. See also free will and theology, Judaism. The Bible contains references to Sheol, literally gloom, as the common destination of the dead, which may be compared with the Hades or underworld of ancient religions and later tradition. This is interpreted either as hell or as a literary expression for death or the grave in general. According to a Gaddic passage in the Talmud, God judges who has followed his commandments and who does not, and to what extent those who do not pass the test go to a purifying place, sometimes referred to as Gehonim, hell, but more analogous to the Christian purgatory, to learn their lesson. There is, however, for the most part, no eternal damnation. The vast majority of souls only go to that reforming place for a limited amount of time, less than 1 year. Certain categories are spoken of as having no part in the world to come, but this appears to mean annihilation rather than an eternity of torment. Philosophical rationalists such as Maimonides believe that God did not actually mete out rewards and punishment as such. In this view, these were beliefs that were necessary for the masses to believe in order to maintain a structured society and to encourage the observance of Judaism. However, once one learned Torah properly, one could then learn the higher truths. In this view, the nature of the reward is that if a person perfected his intellect to the highest degree, then the part of his intellect that connected to God, the active intellect, would be immortalized and enjoy the glory of the presence for all eternity. The punishment would simply be that this would not happen. No part of one's intellect will be immortalized with God. See divine providence in Jewish thought. The Kabbalah, mystical tradition in Judaism. Contain further elaboration, though some Jews do not consider these authoritative. For example, it admits the possibility of reincarnation, which is generally rejected by non-mystical Jewish theologians and philosophers. It also believes in a triple soul, of which the lowest level, nephesh or animal life, dissolves into the elements. The middle layer, ruach or intellect, goes to Gan Eden paradise, while the highest level, neshama or spirit, seeks union with God. Some Jews consider tikkun olam, or repairing the world, as a fundamental motivating factor in Jewish ethics. Therefore, the concept of life after death in the Jewish view is not encouraged as the motivating factor in performance of Judaism. Indeed, it is held that one can attain closeness to God even in this world through moral and spiritual perfection. Israel, chosen for a purpose. Jews as a chosen people. See also Jewish views on religious pluralism. God chose the Jewish people to be a unique covenant with God. The description of this covenant is the Torah itself. God further declared in the Torah through prophecy to Moses that his firstborn is the Israelites. However, closeness and being chosen does not imply exclusivity as anyone can join and convert. Included in the idea of being chosen is that Jews were chosen for a specific mission, a duty to be a light unto the nations, and to have a covenant with God as described in the Torah. Rabbi Lord Emanuel Jacobitz, former chief rabbi of the United Synagogue of Great Britain, describes the mainstream Jewish view on this issue. Yes, I do believe that the chosen people concept as affirmed by Judaism in its Holy Writ, its prayers, and its millennial tradition. In fact, I believe that every people, and indeed in a more limited way, every individual is chosen or destined for some distinct purpose in advancing the designs of providence. Only some fulfill their mission and others do not. Maybe the Greeks were chosen for their unique contribution to art and philosophy, the Romans for their pioneering services in law and government, the British for bringing parliamentary rule into the world, and the American for piloting democracy in a pluralistic society. The Jews were chosen by God to be peculiar unto me as the pioneers of religion and morality. That was and is their national purpose. The Messiah. Judaism acknowledges an afterlife, but does not have a single or systemic way of thinking about the afterlife. Judaism places its overwhelming stress on Olam Hazeh, this world, rather than Olam Haba, the world to come. And speculations about the world to come are peripheral to mainstream Judaism. In Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, it is said that 1 hour of penitence and good deeds in this world is better than all the life of the world to come. But 1 hour of spiritual repose in the world to come is better than all the life of this world, reflecting both a view of the significance of life on earth and the spiritual repose granted to the righteous in the next world. Jews reject the idea that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah and agree that the Messiah has not yet come. Throughout Jewish history, there have been a number of Jewish Messiah claimants considered false by Jews, including most notably Simon Bar Kokhba and Sabbatai Zebach, whose followers were known as Sabbateans. The 12 of Maimonides' 13 principle of faith was, I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah, Mashiach. And though he may tarry, still I await him every day. Orthodox Jews believe that a future Jewish Messiah, the Mashiach, anointed one, will be a king who will rule the Jewish people independently and according to Jewish law in a traditional view. The Messiah was understood to be a human descendant of King David, that is, of the Davidic line. Liberal or Reformed Judaism does not believe in the arrival of a personal Messiah who will ingather the exiles in the land of Israel and cause the physical resurrection of the dead. Rather, Reformed Jews focus on a future age in which there is a perfect world of justice and mercy. Now, like I said, we're on Wikipedia. You know, Wikipedia has footnotes, references, and citations. You can also refer to Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica. And you can also refer to the New International Encyclopedia. You can refer to World Book Encyclopedia. See, you have to always remember, just like a dictionary. Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Yeah. Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Then you have Cambridge dictionary, Oxford dictionary. It's a lot of business involved in this. Even though Oxford University is the oldest university in the world, then came Cambridge, so on and so forth. You also have a dictionary, Macmillan Dictionary. You have Collins Dictionary. It's a business also. That's what it's not just a book and people don't make money off of it. No, they make money off it. It's a business. They competing with one another. So they have standards. So you have a PhD. If you're gonna stay in business, you got to have the top. You got to have the top person with the education, the PhD. In encyclopedia, the same thing. World Book Encyclopedia is an American company that was started here in the United States of America in the early 1900s. It's an American company. It's a company. World Book Encyclopedia. They're competing with Encyclopedia Britannica. It's a business. It's not just a book. It's a business. The PhD is working for World Book Encyclopedia, working for Encyclopedia Britannica, as well as what's the other, the New International Encyclopedia. Now, I'm going to continue my reading. I'm going to have to summarize today because I know it's getting late. It's almost 2:30 now. But so what I'm going to do, I'm going to be clicking back and forth, talking about the same thing, dualism and cosmology. Dualism in cosmology. Dualism or dualistic, we're on Wikipedia. Of course, we're on Wikipedia first. Let me scroll down right quick. All right, we have see also. You have footnotes, bibliography, and external links. All right, let me get back up here. So like I said, I'm on Wikipedia first, and then I'm going to click over to Britannica. Dualism in cosmology. Dualism or dualistic cosmology is the moral or belief that two fundamental concepts exist, which often oppose each other. It is an umbrella term that covers a diversity of views from various religions, including both traditional religions and scriptural religions. Moral dualism is the belief of the great complement of or conflict between the benevolent and the malevolent. It simply implies that there are two moral opposites that work independent of any interpretation of what might be moral and independent of how these may be represented. Moral opposites might, for example, exist in a worldview that has one God, more than one God, or none. By contrast, duotheism, bitheism, or ditheism implies at least two gods, while bitheism implies harmony, ditheism implies rivalry and opposition, such as between good and evil, or light and dark, or summer and winter. For example, a ditheistic system could be one in which one God is a creator and the other a destroyer. In theology, dualism can also refer to the relationship between the deity and creation, or the deity and the universe. So you got to see theistic dualism. That form of dualism is a belief shared in certain traditions of Christianity and Hinduism. Alternatively, in ontological dualism, the world is divided into two overarching categories. Within Chinese culture and philosophy, the opposition and combination of the universe's two basic principles are expressed as yin and yang in our traditionally foundational doctrine of Taoism, Confucianism, and some Chinese Buddhist schools. All right, many myths and creation motifs with dualistic cosmology have been described in ethnographic and anthropologic literature. The motifs conceive the world as being created, organized, or influenced by two demiurges, culture heroes, or other mythological beings who compete with each other or have a complementary function in creating, arranging, or influencing the world. There is a huge diversity of such cosmology. In some cases, such as among the Chukchi, that's a group of people. They're over in Siberia, ethnic group native to the Chukchi Peninsula, the shores of the Chukchi Sea and the Barents Sea region of the Arctic Ocean, all within modern Russia. They speak the Chukchi language, and then so on and so forth. All right. The beings collaborate rather than compete, and they contribute to the creation in a co-equal way. In many other instances, the two beings are not of the same importance or power. Sometimes one of them is even characterized as gullible. Sometimes they may be contrasted as good versus evil. They may be often believed to be twins or at least brothers. Dualistic motifs in mythologies can be observed in all inhabited continents. Zolotarjov concludes that they cannot be explained by diffusion or borrowing, but are rather of convergent origin. They are related to a dualistic organization of society, morties. In some cultures, the social organization may have ceased to exist, but mythology preserves the memory in more and more disguised ways. All right. So let me click over here to Britannica. Now let me read this little thing here. Now when you over here on Britannica, it's some right up at the top. It said fact checked by the editors of Encyclopedia Britannica. So it's been fact checked by the editors. Now dualism in religion, the doctrine that the world or reality consists of two basic, opposed, and irreducible principles that account for all that exists. It has played an important role in the history of thought and of religion. Now the nature and significance in religion. Dualism means the belief in two supreme opposed powers or gods or sets of divine or demonic beings that cause the world to exist. It may conveniently be contrasted with monism, which sees the world as consisting of one principle, such as mind, spirit, or matter. With monotheism, or with various pluralisms and polytheism, we see a multiplicity of principal powers at work. As is indicated below, however, the situation is not always clear and simple, a matter of one or two or many. For there are monotheistic, monistic, and polytheistic religions with dualistic aspects. Various distinctions may be discerned in the type of dualism in general. In the first place, dualism may be either absolute or relative. In a radical or absolute dualism, the two principles are held to exist from eternity. For example, in the Iranian dualism, Zoroastrianism, and Manichaeism, both the bright and beneficent and the sinister and destructive principle are from eternity. In a mitigated or relative dualism, one of the two principles may be derived from or presuppose the other as a basis. For example, the Bogomils, a medieval heretical Christian group, held that the devil is a fallen angel who came from God and was the creator of the human body, into which he managed by trickery to have God infuse a soul. Here, the devil is a subordinate being and not co-eternal with God, the absolute eternal being. This then is clearly a qualified, not a radical dualism, but radical and mitigated types of dualism are found among different groups of the late medieval Cathari, a Christian heretical movement closely related to the Bogomils. Another and perhaps more important distinction is that between dialectical and eschatological dualism. Dialectical dualism involves an eternal dialectic or tension of two opposed principles, such as in Western culture, the one and the many, or idea and matter, or space called by Plato the receptacle. And in Indian culture, Maya, the illusory world of sense experience and multiplicity, and Atman Brahman, the essential identity of self and ultimate reality. Dialectical dualism ordinarily implies a cyclical or eternally repetitive view of history. Eschatological dualism, a dualism concerned with the ultimate destiny of humanity and the world, how things will be in the last time, on the other hand, conceives of a final resolution of the present dualistic state of things, in which evil will be eliminated at the end of a linear history, constituted of a series of unrepeatable events instead of a cyclical, repetitive one. The ancient Iranian religions, Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism and Gnosticism, a religio-philosophical movement influential in the Hellenistic world, provide examples of eschatological dualism, a type of thought, such as Platonism, that insists on a profound harmony in the cosmos, is thus more radically dualistic because of its irreducibly dialectical character than Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism, with their emphasis on the cosmic struggle between two antithetical principles, good and evil. Midway between these extremes is Gnostic dualism, which has an ontology or theory of being of an orphic Platonic type, see below among ancient civilizations and people, but which also affirms the final disappearance and annihilation of evil with the eventual destruction of the material world, and thus comprises both dialectical and eschatological dualism. In philosophy, dualism is often identified with the doctrine of transcendence, that there is a separate realm or being above and beyond the world, as opposed to monism, which holds that the ultimate principle is inside the world, immanent. In the disciplines concerned with the study of religions, however, religious dualism refers not to the distinction or separation of God in the world, but to the doctrine of two basic principles, a doctrine that moreover may easily be compatible with the form of monism. Example, Orphism or the Advaita school of Vedanta, that makes the opposition between the one and the many absolute and sees in multiplicity merely a fragmentation or illusory obliteration of the one. All right. Now I'm going to click back over to Wikipedia. All right, well, moral dualism. Moral dualism is the belief of the great complement or conflict between the benevolent and the malevolent, like ditheism, bitheism. See below. Moral dualism does not imply the absence of monist or monotheistic principle. Moral dualism simply implies that there are two moral opposites at work, independent of any interpretation of what might be moral, and unlike ditheism, bitheism, independent of how these may be represented. For example, Mazdian Zoroastrianism is both dualistic and monotheistic, but not monist by definition, since in that philosophy God, the creator, is purely good, and the antithesis, which is also uncreated, is an absolute one. Mandeism is monotheistic and Gnostic, and in its cosmology, the world of light, Alma Nahura, that is good, is contrasted with the world of darkness or underworld, Alma Zuka, that is evil. Zurvanism, Zurvanite Zoroastrianism, and Manichaeism are representative of dualistic and monist philosophy, since each has a supreme and transcendental first principle from which the two equal but opposite entities then emanate. This is also true for the suppressed Christian Gnostic religions such as Bogomils, Catharism, and so on. More complex forms of monist dualism also exist. For instance, in Hermeticism, where now thought that is described to have created man brings forth both good and evil, dependent on interpretation whether it receives prompting from the God or from the demon duality with pluralism is considered a logical fallacy. Now, history. Moral dualism began as a theological belief. Dualism was first seen implicitly in Egyptian religion beliefs by the contrast of the gods, Set, disorder, death, and Osiris, order, life. The first explicit conception of dualism came from the ancient Persian religion of Zoroastrianism around the mid-5th century BC. Zoroastrianism is a monotheistic religion that believes that Ahura Mazda is the eternal creator of all good things. Any violation of Ahura Mazda's order arises from Druj, which is everything uncreated. From this comes a significant choice for humans to make. Either they fully participate in human life for Ahura Mazda, or they do not, and give Druj power. Personal dualism is even more distinct in the belief of later religions. The religious dualism of Christianity between good and evil is not a perfect dualism, as God, good, and inevitably destroys Satan, evil. Early Christian dualism is largely based on Platonic dualism. See Neoplatonism and Christianity. There is also a personal dualism in Christianity with a soul-body distinction based on the idea of an immaterial Christian soul. Now, duotheism, bitheism, and ditheism. When used with regards to multiple gods, dualism may refer to duotheism, bitheism, or ditheism. Although ditheism, bitheism imply moral dualism, they are not equivalent. Ditheism, bitheism implies at least two gods, while moral dualism does not necessarily imply theism, theos equal God, at all. Both bitheism and ditheism imply belief in two equally powerful gods with complementary or autonomous properties. However, while bitheism implies harmony, ditheism implies rivalry and opposition. Such as between good and evil, bright and dark, and summer and winter. For example, a ditheistic system would be one in which one God is creative, the other is destructive. Theodicy. In the original conception of Zoroastrianism, for example, Ahura Mazda was the spirit of ultimate good, while Ahriman Angramania was the spirit of ultimate evil. In a bitheistic system, by contrast, where the two deities are not in conflict or opposition, one could be male and the other female. Duotheism. One well-known example of a bitheistic or a duotheistic theology based on gender polarity is found in the neo-pagan religion of Wicca. In Wicca, dualism is represented in the belief of a god and a goddess as a dual partnership in ruling the universe. This is centered on the worship of a divine couple, the moon goddess and the horn god, who are regarded as lovers. However, there is also a ditheistic theme within traditional Wicca, as the horn god has dual aspects of bright and dark, relating to day, night, summer, winter, expressed as the oak king and the holy king, who in Wiccan myth and ritual are said to engage in battle twice a year for the hand of the goddess, resulting in the change in seasons. Within Wicca, bright and dark do not correspond to notions of good and evil, but are aspects of the natural world, much like yin and yang in Taoism. Now, radical and mitigated dualism. Radical dualism or absolute dualism, which posits two co-equal divine forces. Manichaeism conceives of two previously coexisting realms of light and darkness, which become embroiled in conflict owing to the chaotic actions of the latter. Subsequently, certain elements of the light became entrapped within darkness. The purpose of material creation is to enact the slow process of extraction of these individual elements, at the end of which the kingdom of light will prevail over darkness. Manichaeism likely inherits the dualistic mythology from Zoroastrianism, in which the eternal spirit, Ahura Mazda, is opposed by his antithesis, Angramania. The two are engaged in a cosmic struggle the conclusion of which will likewise see Ahura Mazda triumphant. The hymn of the pearl included the belief that the material world corresponds to some sort of malevolent intoxication brought about by the powers of darkness to keep elements of the light trapped inside it in a state of drunken distraction. Mitigated dualism is where one or two principles is in some way inferior to the other. Such classical Gnostic movements as the Sethians conceived of the material world being created by a lesser divinity than the true God that was the object of their devotion. The spiritual world conceived of as being radically different from the material world, coextensive with the true God and the true home of certain enlightened members of humanity. Thus, these systems were expressive of a feeling of acute alienation within the world, and their resultant aim was to allow the soul to escape the constraints presented by the physical realm. However, bitheistic and ditheistic principles are not always so easily contrastable. For instance, in a system where one God is the representative of summer and drought and the other of winter and rain fertility, the mythology of Persephone in Martianism, an early Christian sect held that the Old and New Testament were the work of two opposing gods. Both were first principles but of different religions. All right, what's left? Okay, theistic and ontological. Now, on this Wikipedia, what's left is theistic dualism and ontological dualism. So I'm going to click back over to Britannica. Now, historical varieties of religious dualism among ancient civilizations and peoples. Dualism is a phenomenon of major importance in the religions of the ancient world. Those of the Middle East would be considered here Egypt and Mesopotamia. While there was generally no explicit dualism in ancient Egyptian religion, there was an implicit dualism in the contrast between the god Seth and the god Osiris. Seth, a violent, aggressive, foreign, sterile god connected with disorder, the desert, and loneliness, was opposed to Osiris, the god of fertility and life, active in the waters of the Nile. Seth also possessed some typically dualistic marks of a mythological character. His actions as well as his personality itself was ambivalent, and as a typical trickster, he was also capable at times of constructive actions in the cosmos. The myth of Osiris and Seth may be compared in various ways with those recently discovered among the Dogon people of the Western Sudan, which contrast Nomo, a fertile and happily mated primordial being pictured in fish form, with Urugu, pale fox, an unhappy sterile character who lives in the wilderness without a mate. Urugu is considered to be the element that makes the universe complete, the same role assigned to Seth in the Egyptian myth. Dualism, probably speaking, was also present in ancient Mesopotamian religion, in myths pertaining to the origin of the gods and of the cosmos, the opposition between the primordial deities, Apsu, the abyss, and Tiamat, the sea, and the new ones, particularly Marduk, the demiurge or creator, displays some dualistic aspect, though the earlier deities established the basic reality of the universe. Its ontological core, because of their chaotic and selfish nature, they resisted their own offspring who were later to create the now existing definite order of the cosmos. A dualism of the ontological basic reality or being versus the cosmological, the form or order of the material universe, is thus implicitly affirmed. Greece and the Hellenistic world. What time? There's a lot to read right now. All right, that's historical varieties of religious dualism on Britannica. Now, I just read Egypt and Mesopotamia. And then it comes to the Greece and the Hellenistic world. See, it's a lot. It's very long. And then it comes to, and then included in that is like talking about Plato, metaphysical and antithetical. Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, Zoroastrianism, and all that. Then you got over in Iran, Zoroastrianism and Zoroastrianism. Then among South and East Asian religions, India. Then China. Then you start talking about the religions of the West, such as Judaism. Now, it starts out by saying about Judaism, of course, no real dualism is found in Judaism, except in the Gnostic and Theosophic forms of Jewish mysticism known as Kabbalah. And you know Kabbalah is esoteric. Because the presence of a vigorous and universal monotheism implies not only faith in a single creative God, but also faith in the God who is the uncontested master of history, and neither Satan nor Belial detracts from this absolute monotheism. And that then you have Christianity. And most of all that dualism in Christianity, it ain't nothing but the Gnostic nonsense. And then you have among religions of modern, hold up. And then, I was saying, okay, I've almost, you have conceptions of a similar type are also found in the Psalms or hymn, other Nassim is the Hebrew term for oath fight mentioned above, and in the Song of the Pearl in the Gnostic Acts of Thomas. And then here also occurs the concept of a Savior to be saved, who has been sent from above and was made a prisoner by darkness. This basic concept was developed fully only in Manichaeism. And then the Gnostic dualist view survived in late antiquity and into the Middle Ages, both in the East among the Mandeans, the Yazidi, and some extreme sects within the Shiite branch of Islam, and in the West among the Bogomils and the Cathari. It is still present today in modern theosophy. Then you have among religions of modern indigenous peoples, North American Indian mythology, and some of the Asiatic Turks, among the Altags is typical. Some of them, the Ehrlich, and so, like I said, when you be on Britannica, it's very detailed. It's very detailed. So it's a lot. But let me click over here to, before I end today's video. Let me click back over here to Wikipedia. Theistic dualism. Then under theistic dualism, there's another one. Ontological dualism. So I'm on theistic dualism. In theology, dualism can refer to the relationship between God and creation or God and the universe. This form of dualism is a belief shared in certain traditions of Christianity and Hinduism. You have Zoroastrianism. It's one of the world's oldest continuous practice religions based on the teachings of the Iranian-speaking prophet Zoroaster and his dualistic cosmology of good and evil, and the eschatology which predicts the ultimate conquest of evil by good. Zoroastrianism exalts an uncreated benevolent deity of wisdom known as Ahura Mazda. Wilder as its supreme being. Manichaeism was a major religion founded in the 3rd century AD by the Parthian prophet Mani, and in the Sasanian Empire. Manichaeism taught an elaborate dualistic cosmology describing the struggle between a good spiritual world of light and an evil material world of darkness. Through an ongoing process that takes place in human history, light is gradually removed from the world of matter and returned to the world of light whence it came. Its beliefs were based on local Mesopotamian religion movements and Gnosticism. Now, in Christianity, the dualism between God and creation has existed as a central belief in multiple historical sets and traditions of Christianity, including Marcionism, Catharism, Paulicianism, and other forms of Gnostic Christianity. Christian dualism refers to the belief that God and creation are distinct but interrelated through an indivisible bond. However, Gnosticism is a diverse, syncretistic religious movement. Let me click on that. Syncretistic. Syncretism is the practice of combining different beliefs and various schools of thought. We're on Wikipedia now. Syncretism involves the merging or assimilation of several originally discrete traditions, especially in the theology and mythology of religion, thus asserting an underlying unity and allowing for an inclusive approach to other faiths. While syncretism in art and culture is sometimes likened to eclecticism in the realm of religion, it specifically denotes a more integrated merging of beliefs into a unified system distinct from eclecticism, which implies a selective adoption of elements from different traditions without necessarily blending them into a new cohesive belief system. Syncretism also manifests in politics known as syncretic politics. Now, nomenclature, social and political roles. Religious syncretism is the blending of two or more religious belief systems into a new system, or the incorporation into a religious tradition of beliefs from unrelated traditions. This can occur for many reasons. In the latter scenario, happens quite commonly in areas where multiple religious traditions exist in proximity and function actively in their culture, or when a culture is conquered and the conquerors bring their religious beliefs with them, but do not succeed in entirely eradicating the old beliefs or especially practice. Religions may have syncretic elements to their beliefs or history, but adherents of so labeled systems often frown on applying the label, especially adherents who belong to revealed religious systems, such as the Abrahamic religions, or in the system that exhibits an exclusivist approach. Such adherents sometimes see syncretism as a betrayal of their pure truth. By this reason, adding an incompatible belief corrupts the original religion, rendering it no longer true. Indeed, critics of a syncretistic trend may use the word or its variants as a disparaging epithet, as a charge implying that those who seek to incorporate a new view, belief, or practice into a religious system pervert the original faith. Non-exclusivist systems of belief, on the other hand, may feel quite free to incorporate other traditions into their own. Keith Fernando notes that the term syncretism is an elusive one and can refer to superstition or modification of the essential elements of a religion by beliefs or practices introduced from elsewhere. The consequence under such a definition, according to Fernando, can lead to a fatal compromise of the original religion's integrity. Now, let me click back over. Alright. However, Gnosticism is a diverse syncretistic religious movement consisting of various belief systems, generally uniting the belief in a distinction between a supreme transcendent God and a blind evil demiurge responsible for creating the material universe, thereby trapping the divine spark within matter. Gnosticism is not limited to Christianity and also incorporates beliefs from other Abrahamic traditions such as early Jewish sects. In sets like the Cathars and the Paulicians, this is a dualism between the material world, created by an evil God and a moral God. Historians divide Christian dualism into absolute dualism, which held that the good and evil gods were equally powerful, and mitigated dualism, which held that material evil was subordinate to the spiritual good. The belief by Christian theologians who adhere to a libertarian or compatibilist view of free will, that free will separates humankind from God, has also been characterized as a form of dualism. The theologian Leroy Stevens Roner compares the dualism of Christianity with the dualism that exists in Zoroastrianism and the Samkhya tradition of Hinduism. The theological use of the word dualism dates back to 1700 in a book that described the dualism between good and evil. The tolerance of dualism ranges widely among the different Christian traditions. As a monotheistic religion, the conflict between dualism and monism has existed in Christianity since its inception. The 1912 Catholic Encyclopedia described that in the Catholic Church, the dualistic hypothesis of an eternal world existing so side by side with God was, of course, rejected by the 13th century, but mind-body dualism was not. The problem of evil is difficult to reconcile with absolute monism and has prompted some Christian sects to veer towards dualism. Gnostic forms of Christianity were more dualistic, and some Gnostic traditions posited that the devil was separate from God as an independent deity. The Christian dualists of the Byzantine Empire, the Paulicians, were seen as Manichaean heretics by Byzantine theologians. This tradition of Christian dualism, founded by Constantine Sylvanus, argued that the universe was created through evil and separate from a moral God. From a moral God. Now, the Cathars, a Christian sect in southern France, believed that there was a dualism between two gods, one representing good and the other representing evil. Whether or not the Cathari possessed direct historical influence from ancient Gnosticism is a matter of dispute. As the basic conception of Gnostic cosmology and to be found in Cathar believe most distinctly in their notion of a lesser creator God, though unlike the second century Gnostic, they did not apparently place any special relevance upon knowledge, notion, as an effective salvific force. In any case, the Roman Catholic Church denounced the Cathars as heretics and sought to crush the movement in the 13th century. The Albigensian Crusade was initiated by Pope Innocent III in 1208 to remove the Cathars from Languedoc in France, where they were known as Albigensians. The Inquisition, which began in 1233 under Pope Gregory IX, also targeted the Cathars. In Hinduism, the Dvaita Vedanta school of Indian philosophy espoused a dualism between God and the universe by theorizing the existence of two separate realities. The first and the more important reality is that of Shiva or Shakti, or Vishnu or Brahman. Shiva or Shakti or Vishnu is the supreme self, God, the absolute truth of the universe, the independent reality. The second reality is that of dependent but equally real universe that exists with its own separate essence. Everything that is composed of the second reality, such as individual soul, jiva, matter, etc., exists with their own separate reality. The distinguishing factor of this philosophy, as opposed to Advaita Vedanta, monistic conclusion of Vedas, is that God takes on a personal role and is seen as a real eternal entity that governs and controls the universe, because the existence of individuals is grounded in the divine. They are depicted as reflections, images, or even shadows of the divine, but never in any way identical with the divine. Salvation, therefore, is described as a realization that all finite reality is essentially dependent on the supreme. Now you have ontological dualism, and that means that alternatively, dualism can mean the tendency of humans to perceive and understand the world as being divided. into two overarching categories. In this sense, it is dualistic when one perceives a tree as a thing separate from everything surrounding it. This form of ontological dualism exists in Taoism and Confucianism, and a foundational theory within traditional Chinese medicine beliefs that divide the universe into the complementary oppositions of yin and yang. In traditions such as classical Hinduism, Samkhya, Yoga, Vyashika, and later Vedanta schools which accepted the theory of gunas. Chinese Pure Land and Zen, Buddhism or Islamic Sufism, a key to enlightenment is transcending this sort of dualistic thinking without merely substituting dualism with monism or pluralism. Then you have Chinese philosophy. Then you have other religions, other people. So let me click before. All right, I'm gonna be on short on this one. Mind-body dualism in the philosopher of mind. Excuse me. Mind-body dualism denotes either the view that mental phenomena are non-physical, or that the mind and body are distinct and separable. Thus, it encompasses a set of views about the relationship between mind and matter, as well as between subject and object, in this contrast with other positions such as physicalism and inactivism in the mind-body problem. Now, Now, and so like mind-body dualism, and so dualism is closely associated with the thought of Rene Descartes, 1641, who holds that the mind is a non-physical and therefore non-spatial substance. Descartes clearly identified the mind with consciousness and self-awareness and distinguished this from the physical brain as the seat of intelligence. Hence, he was the first documented Western philosopher to formulate the mind-body problem in the form in which it exists today. However, the theory of substance dualism has many advocates in contemporary philosophers such as Richard Swinburne, William Haskell, J.P. Moreland, E.J. Lowe, Charles Tagliaferro, Sayed Jabbar, Mossavari, and John Foster. Dualism is contrasted with various kinds of monism. Substance dualism is contrasted with all forms of materialism, but property dualism may be considered a form of emergent materialism or non-reductive physicalism in some sense. Now you have types. Ontological dualism makes dual commitments about the nature of existence as it relates to mind and matter, and can be divided into three different types. Substance dualism asserts that mind and matter are fundamentally distinct kinds of foundations. Property dualism suggests that the ontological distinction lies in the difference between properties of mind and matter, as in emergentism. Predicate dualism claims the irreducibility of mental predicates to physical predicates. Then you have substance or Cartesian dualism, or property dualism, or non-reductive physicalism, epiphenomenalism, predicate dualism, so on and so forth. Alright, so I'm gonna get ready to end today's video. See, it's important that I do my reading and where I do my reading from. Because just think, if I was just reading a newspaper or something, it'd be all kind of confusion about that, because you ain't finna pick up no news or a magazine, and it might be people with a PhD or something like that. But it'll be all kind of arguments and, you know, all kind of confusion. You know, if you Wikipedia or Encyclopedia Britannica, with all them references, citations, footnotes, extra reading and all that. You can try to bring up something you want. But only thing gonna happen is that you're gonna be exposed for lying. That's all there is to it. But look here, I'm finna get ready to end today's video. Again, my name is Eric D. Johnson, also on BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, state, state of Tennessee. And I thank all my family, my support, for your continued encouragement, support, and continue to pray. Continue to pray for peace. There are wars being fought all over the world, and continue to pray. You know, just pray for peace. Continue to, you know, pray with a sincere heart that we as human beings will learn to live, you know, peaceably with one another, and stop all these wars. And I know that, you know, tomorrow is, like I said, tomorrow is, you know, this a holiday weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I didn't work this weekend, and had the opportunity to be off this weekend, and so tomorrow being Monday, Labor Day and everything, you know, enjoy my Labor Day, and you enjoy your time that you have, and I know it's gonna be some kind of marathon on USA or some other TV program, television channel, Law and Order, you know, Special Victims Unit, or, you know, it'd be a lot of rerun. Then it might be some MTV music, TV, you know, MTV music video from the 1980s and everything, and Fox movie, you know, Fox TV movie, the movie channel. Early, you know, in the morning time they have retro movies, you know, some of the older movies and things, and then later on there'll be some movies on. So starting later on, you know, I just find me some movies to watch or something, you know, and just enjoy my holiday, you know. You be safe, you know. Hope and pray that everyone have a safe and blessed Labor Day. And like I say, continue to pray for peace. We be watching world news, and we be seeing a lot of wars being fought. So we just pray for peace. All those, and before I end today's video, here in the United States of America, we know we got a very important presidential election coming up, and all those who are eligible to vote, man, I just encourage everyone to exercise their right to vote, man. Irregardless, you can vote Democrat or Republican. Just exercise your right to vote, because you have that's a right. And whoever you support, exercise your right to vote. Don't just not vote and then sit around and complain. Exercise your right to vote, and then when you exercise your right to vote, that gives you a voice. They affords you that opportunity, to have a voice in the government, federal, state, and local election. You get to vote. If you don't vote, apparently you don't care. You're not concerned. So what's the use of complaining? You got to vote. So vote. Exercise your right to vote. Vote based on the issues. Vote. Now, I'm getting ready to end today's video, so you take care of yourself. Wish each and every one of you the very best.